Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unlocked, where we talk about unlocking the potential of you, the people you work with, and the people you do life with. At the time of this recording, I'm offering all of you, yes, my lovely listeners, a free 15-minute communication coaching call. You come with some kind of communication problem, and I give you a solution. My calendar link is in the show notes, so check that out. Work-life balance. Is that even a real term? Yes, it is. We use it all the time. What does it actually mean? I don't know. I think we all struggle with it just a bit, especially right now during this time of burnout and fatigue in the workplace and all these other things that are going on. My guest today is Randy Gravitt, and he is just, I feel like I just want to hang out with this dude. Like, I just want to go hang out with him. So personable, so easy to talk to. And I think you're going to sense that when in this interview. He's an author, a speaker, an executive coach. And he, in 2014, founded Lead Every Day with his partner, Mark Miller, who, if you haven't caught that episode yet, you should go back and listen to that one on uncommon greatness. He just wrote a book called Uncommon Greatness. Super brilliant guy. And you can tell why these two are the dynamic duo. They're pretty awesome together. And I hope to hang out with them soon because we're all in this Atlanta area. So hold me to that one. He's helped coaches and organizations all over really talk about this idea of leadership. He's worked with sports teams. He's worked with bigger organizations, mainly Chick-fil-A and also some other teams, sports teams that he's going to talk about on the show. He's written 2 previous books, Finding Your Way and Unstuck. And he also hosts a daily podcast called The Lead Every Day Show. I guess you have to do it every day if it's called that, right? Little pressure there, with former Chick-fil-A VP of Leader Development, Mark Miller, my previous guest. So you'll hear a little bit about that. We're going to talk about his new book and what that is all about, because here is the deal. This whole thing about work and life and how we succeed at work, succeed at home, fail at work, fail at home, it's all intertwined. And what do we define success as is a really important question. And we talk about that on this episode. So without further ado, here we come. Randy, I am so excited to talk to you because what we're going to talk about today is let's say a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited about talking to you too. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for all you do.
Well, thanks for all you do. You've paved the path for lots of us that are following in your footsteps of leadership and really helping leaders be the best people they can be, not only at work but at home too. Because how many times have you heard, the spouse or somebody else come up to you and kind of like say, I don't really know what you did to my husband. I don't know what you did to my wife, but thank you. How many times does that happen?
Yeah, it happens. It definitely does. We try to remind leaders all the time, if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. It's not enough just to go build something great and then not have it great when you go home at night. So, or in the day, whenever you go home. So we're trying to, we spend most of our time helping leaders in the corporate space, but I just thought there was such a gap here with this idea of what happens outside of work. I think actually that's positions you to win at work. So we thought, well, let's just create some content for that, because nobody seems to be talking about it, and it seems to, like you say, be a big problem.
It is. And it kind of goes along with the whole burnout thing that's happening right now. I mean, that burnout topic's hitting hard. And I don't know if it's because of the flux of, there was a big lull, layoffs during COVID, and then a big hiring jump that happened, and then kind of back down a little bit. And then people are learned during COVID to do more with less people and resources. And then their people are burnt out. And I don't know, it's reflecting a lot in the home space too.
Well, it is. And I ran across a quote from, what's the guy's name? David White. I don't know if you've heard of him. He calls himself a corporate poet. I'm not even sure what that is, but he's got some really cool books. And he wrote a book years ago called, I think, Crossing the Unknown Sea. And he talks about burnout in there. And he says that the antidote to exhaustion, I love this quote. He says, the antidote to exhaustion, burnout, is not necessarily rest. We think, well, I just need a nap, or I need to pull back, I need a vacation, I need more time with my family. He says the antidote to exhaustion is actually wholeheartedness. And when we have a whole heart, we have, and I like to think of it when we have an integrated life, not just, our math word integer is where we get our word integrity from. And there's this wholeheartedness, to use his phrase, that comes. And when we have that, most people don't get really burned out. But when my life is disintegrated or blown apart, home's not working, work might be working, home's not so good, or home is okay and work's not so good. I think we ought to be really focused on having an integrated life. And if we can get that going on, most people don't end up burned out. So I think sometimes we're just not taking care of ourselves the way we should, not thinking about both sides of the coin, home and work like we need to. So yeah, we got this book coming out called Winning Begins at Home, and I'm excited about it.
Let's talk about the idea of success, because I think that's what, I don't know, without your thoughts on this yet, but I mean, the perspective of success. And I don't know if it's a, way of, just an old school way of thinking of like, if I fail at work, then who am I? Like my identity's wrapped up in my achievements at work. My identity's wrapped up in who I am at work. And if I fail there, then who am I? So my success at work has to be there, or else I'm a failure as a human being.
Yeah, I think sometimes we find our identity in the wrong places if we're not careful. And work is a good example. We get a paycheck at work. A lot of us have a supervisor that gives you you get a review, or you got somebody telling you what to do, or you got expectations. And so many people at home, especially moms and dads who are parents, I know you have kids. We have 4 girls ourselves. They're grown up and gone now, have their own kids, which is cool. But when I look at people at home, so many times these expectations, we're not really sure what to do. We end up, when we first have kids, we felt like we were making it up as you go. I mean, we just, like, you don't know anything, and but at work, you kind of know what you're doing and you know what you're supposed to do. And so it's easy to get it twisted and think our identity is there. And we start describing success the wrong way, or embracing a definition of success that's really not. It's what the world says is success. But if we really stop and think about it, like what makes you successful? And I know you had my friend and partner Mark Miller on a few episodes ago, and you guys talked about the idea of uncommon greatness. We've had a chance to work on that project, and I think his language around that is just, it's either there's things that are lasting versus things that are fleeting, and I think when we get it right at home, it just, there's more joy there. There's just better stuff going on than if we only get it right at work. It's just, to me, that's not what I want to do. I want to make sure that I'm actually starting there. To me, there's only one guy who can be the dad to your kids, right? And one guy who can be the husband to your wife, or if you're a wife listening, you're the only spouse. I mean, that kind of mindset. If I remember that, a lot of people can probably do my work outside of home, but you're the guy if you're the father of some kids, or you've got a spouse or whatever. So I think it's a great question, but we get it twisted up. So easy to do.
When we think about, we just got to pay our dues, though, Randy. We just got to pay our dues. We got to. It's the thing of, like, sometimes we'll get our spouses, and then they'll say things like, "Hey, I know you're working a lot right now. I know it's just a season of life, and that's just what you got to do. So I know we don't see you very much. I know you're traveling every week and whatnot. And then you fly in, you're like the weekend parent, like the weekend superhero person. But it's like this mentality around work. Are we enabling this thought? Are we enablers because we're just taking it for what it is? We just assume that that's how happens, and that's how we climb the ladder, is by paying our dues, by not seeing our family?
Yeah, well, uh, I'll take your word there, or your term, pay the dues. I think about joining a club or something. There's dues in those kind of places, and you get to decide whether you want to join that or not. And I think the same thing's true here. When we think about our work and we're traveling, all the time, or we're working 80 hours a week, why are we doing that? I mean, what's, and I understand people are going to push back real quick and say, well, you can't afford to buy groceries or live in a house, or, people like living indoors. It's good. But the reality is, I think we put ourselves on this hamster wheel of activity. And if we're not careful, we'll confuse activity with accomplishment. And I think when you get to the end of your journey, you're going to find that the things that you have regret about are going to be, are going to, a lot of times going to be those things outside of home, and or outside of work. I mean, the things that happen at home. And so it's, to me, it's just, you gotta make a decision, like, how much of yourself are you going to give to your work? And I do think, go back to what we just talked about, a lot of people define their identity in that. I mean, let's be honest, your kids are probably not going to come home tonight and say, thank you for keeping me fed and alive and, all this. And if you do the right thing at work, sometimes we get an accolade, or somebody appreciates it, and we get paid, every couple of weeks. And so it's easy to get all that stuff twisted. But at the end of the day, I think the real heroes are the ones who are remembering that it's not just building a great company, but it's, can we have something outside of work that is going to endure. To me, that's where your legacy will actually be written there, as much as it will in your company or whatever you got going on there.
Can we talk about the work-life balance phrase, please? Can we please hit on that? Because I've heard so many things back and forth about it. I don't know if I truly believe in that true idea of like work-life balance. I don't know if it's like 50% this and 50% that, or like what the ratio is. Like, can we talk about that?
Yeah, I think when I hear that term, you almost think about a seesaw. Back when we were little kids, or I'm pretty old. We had seesaws on the playground back in the day, or a teeter-totter, they called it. And you get equal weight on both sides, and the thing would balance itself out. And if you got somebody who's heavier on one side, it'd jack the other person up, And I think sometimes that's when we think about work-life balance. It's like, I'm going to put 50% over here and 50% over there. And the reality is, you're going to spend a bunch of time at work. A third of your life probably is going to be spent at work. So I don't get so caught up in the amount of time. It's what I do with the time I have where I am. I mean, I can go to work and not be at work. Really, you can spend, I know a lot of people that I think engagement numbers now are at 20% of people are engaged, which is kind of sad. You go to work and you don't really go to work. I mean, I think you ought to love your work, but I also think when you go home, there's this, I'll use the word tension. I heard somebody say one time that balance is learning to live in the center of tension. And I think that's really good. There's always going to be tension. There's, work's going really well right now, and home's not so good, and I've got to put a little more focus over here. I get things going. Even at home, I've got my wife and I, things are great, but my kids, not so great, or one of my kids, I got to struggle there, or now I'm going good with one of these kids, and then next thing you know, our finances are out of whack. So there's a lot of things that happen at home besides, or now I don't have time to exercise or whatever. I mean, all kind of people listening here, there's always going to be tension, Scott. I don't think we're ever going to get to a place where we're going, man, this thing is leveled out and perfect. It's just part of being alive. And so I think we have to get comfortable living in the center of that tension. And there's no perfect life. There's no perfect family, no perfect people. I'm a mess in front of the line. So it's, I don't think we can ever expect for work and life to be balanced. I don't know that that's even possible. So I think we just all let that go and go, you know what, there's going to be some tension here. As long as I'm focused on doing what I can do I use the phrase dominate the controllables. I was years ago, I spent a few years working with a major league baseball team, their coaching staff. And I went in, and first time I was ever with them in the building, all their coaches, about 80 coaches from low A ball all the way up through their major league guys. They're in this building, and they've got a sign they've got their values written out on the wall and these posters. And one of them says, control the controllables. And I went in, and the first thing I told them, I said, I think I think you need to change one of your values. And I thought they were going to kind of throw me out of camp there, first sentence out of my mouth. But I said, here's the deal. I think you ought to try to dominate your controllables. That's the place where you ought to run up the score. You shouldn't try to control what you can control. You should dominate that. There's so little stuff that we can have control over, but I can have control over whether I show up for my kids, and when I'm there, am I really there? Or I'm on my phone and, working through work emails or checking a text. Am I really present with my son or my daughter? Am I really, if you have a son or a daughter, or with your spouse? I mean, you go into a restaurant, you see people sitting together, and you can just tell they're not really together. And I think there's things that we can control. That to me is where we ought to try to run up the score and be present. So that tension deal is real. It's going to be real, and I think we ought to get comfortable with that. And if we can, we have a chance to really win in both places.
Have you worked with, let's just take executives, right? We're going to have some executives listening to this show, and they're in the C-suite, and they've done their work, and now they're up to that level, and they kind of think, it's up to me. A lot of pressure. They feel a lot of the responsibility of their people and of the success of the company, whether it's to shareholders or whoever. And they just hunker down and grind. And maybe it's their tendency they love work. They really enjoy it. And so they sit there and they grind it out, and they are working at all hours of the night and all hours of the day and whatnot. They love their family, but they also love work. And I don't know, like I see this is that okay? Like where is the thing where some executives will say, you know what? No, I'm going home. It's 5:00. Like, are there executives that do that?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. And I think sometimes what I see is executives do love their work. They do find their identity. What we talked about a minute ago, they do find their identity in their work. And if they're not careful, they will begin to forfeit things that are going to actually, I think they're going to matter down the road. When we don't, when we don't focus on home at all, and we just I'm going to grind here. This is going to be my season, and then we're going to get to this point. Well, if you have kids, my wife and I, we have the 4 girls. They're all now have their own families and kids. It just feels like I blinked and that was gone. And so you don't only have so much time. And if we're not careful, we can justify, well, they're really small right now. It's not going to matter. Or they're only in elementary school. And if we move a couple times, I'll do all kind of stuff that goes into our minds here. And they're resilient. They'll be okay. It'll be good for them. I mean, we say all this stuff. And I just think we're going to be, if we're not careful, we're going to just work ourselves to a place where, again, we may be getting a lot of joy out of it, but if we're not careful, we can even mask the fact that we're not so good at home. We don't even know what to do at home. We're not sure how to handle some of those relationships at home. I can tell Bill what to do. He's on my team, and I'll fire him if he does. It's like this crazy stuff we think. But my kid, I don't even know how to handle that. I mean, he's going through some stuff, and I'll just ignore it and hope it'll go away. And Mark and I always say when we're working with companies, hope is not a strategy. And I think the same thing's true at home. It's like, I hope something will be different, or maybe something will change. That's not, you really have to behave your way to high performance. They know that in the workplace. I think the same thing's true at home. I've got to show up at home and make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do there. So I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, I just have met so many executives who have so much regret because they didn't pay attention to what we're talking about here. So
in your book, it's a parable, and there's this guy named John Williams. And so give me the premise of the book. Like, give me a little bit of tidbit of John. What's he going through, and why you wrote it this way?
Yeah, well, that's great. John is he is an executive. He's got a consulting company, and he's doing really well. And things that he's got 3 little kids at home and a wife, and things are rocky at home at best, not going so well. And I'm a storyteller, so that's why I used a parable. We've done some of those in the past, our other books. I know Mark did several of his first books that way, and it got lots of authors who've done that. And I just think it helps us connect to real, a real life situation, to what's going on in one. There's a lot of truth all through this thing. With what's going on with this guy, but basically, the story is his next door neighbor who was his little league coach. Ironically, 30 years earlier, this old guy, still coaching little league baseball, and he has to step aside for a few weeks, and so he gets John to take his place, and John meets this guy who's the head coach, and that guy kind of becomes the guru and walks him through a process that we talk about. And really, if I look back on my life, I even go back to my childhood, my dad is sort of the one who inspired some of this story. He worked with another coach, and it was kind of cool when I was growing up, was playing ball. But the book really has two fundamentals in it. The idea of loving first. It's that we would show up and think about, like, what would it look like for me to love people in such a way that the people who know me the best actually could love me the most. I know so many people, the people who know them the best respect them the least. They're some of the stuff that you were just describing. I'm always at work, or she's always gone, or occasionally this. It's just like kids and spouses need us to be there when we're there, and we don't have to be there all the time, but when we are there, we need to be locked in on what we're trying to do there. And so this love first mindset was, how do we give our kids the benefit of the doubt? How do we give our spouse the benefit of the doubt? How do we approach them with gentleness and not, I've always heard, you're never persuasive when you're abrasive. It's so easy to try to be harsh and make my point and say things. My wife says saying it louder doesn't make you more right. It's loving first is approaching those relationships and being willing to put that other person first. It's the giving them the home field advantage is the way I talk about it sometimes. And we think about sports. If you watch any sports, especially baseball as an example here, the home team typically has the most fans, and they get to bat last. Well, what would it look like for you to let your kid have the last word, or let your spouse go last, in the conversation, and not have to make your point? And so many people are trying to be right rather than get it right. And I want to make sure that we're talking about loving first is, it's kind of to me, that's where it starts. It's the most powerful word in the history of the English language, they say. And yet we think it's just some noun. It's like, well, we're in love. And I always tell people, you don't really fall in love. You fall in a hole. You grow into love. It's love is a verb. It's not just a noun. It's a verb. It's something you do, and you demonstrate that. And that's the second fundamental. It's about living last. It's about, if you're the leader or in a leadership position, this works in the corporate world as well, but you have this mindset of racing to the back of the line. That's the uncommon greatness mindset. It's that I'm going to let other people know that I'm here to help them win. And I like the offensive lineman mindset, which sounds crazy, because if you follow football at all you hear about is quarterbacks and people who score and coaches, whatever. Nobody's ever talking about offensive linemen at all, and yet they're the ones who show up every game, every day, practice, whatever. They get all taped up and padded up, and they go out on the field and they open up a hole so somebody else can score. And that, to me, is what a great mom or a great dad or a great spouse, does, is they are really trying to help the people around them win, rather than this me first, what can you do for me mindset. And I think there's lots of joy there when we get that right, and we know that we're raising winners, and we've got a vibrant relationship here. That's that live last mindset. So all that story really was inspired by watching some of this stuff when I was a kid, and fun story. My dad, I guess I was 12 years old, had just turned 12 years old, was going to be in the top age of our little league, playing little league baseball. And I'm not sure you're an Atlanta guy, but I'm a country boy from up in North Georgia. And so aluminum bats may have been invented a little bit before 1970, whatever that would have been. But for me, they came to our hometown, and I got one for Christmas. And I'm thinking, and I'm going to be the oldest guy in the league, and I'm thinking this changes the game, man. This is going to, these bats you can really hit it a long way with the aluminum bat compared to a wood bat, and so I'm all jacked up about that, and we start getting ready for the season, and my dad says, "Hang on, buddy, I'm going to teach you how to bunt." And I'm thinking, bunt? Have you? I don't even. What is that? And if the listeners are not familiar with baseball, a bunt is when you take the bat, you barely just hit the ball and it goes out in front of the plate, 8 or 10 feet. And really the goal here is if you have a runner on base, you're trying to move the runner up. You're trying to help that runner move up so somebody else can get a hit and that person can score. And man, I'm thinking my dad's lost his mind. Like, bunting, why we're trying to move runners up on base. Why can't I? I want to see if I can hit one over the fence. I'm a little kid, and I'm thinking that feels like that would be a lot more fun, a lot more glory in that than he bunts a lot, And yet what my dad was teaching me was not about baseball at all. It was about, you're going to grow up someday, and sacrifice is going to need to be a part of your thinking if you're going to be a really great leader, if you're going to be a great family member, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, all that stuff really is wrapped up in that story. And I think so many of us, we don't like to think about bunting. We don't like to think about helping somebody else. Like, what can you do for me rather than what can I do for you? But the best leaders I know, my favorite people, honestly, to hang around are the ones who are always thinking others first. They're always helping other people, win. And to me, that's what makes you a winner. If you lie down at night and you didn't help anybody win today, I'm not sure you're winning. But if you really can lie down tonight and go, man, I helped some people make some progress today, that to me is what makes you a leader worth following.
Amen. Is there I'm sure you've seen some successful people do this successfully, balance out this whole work-life thing. And I don't know if it's like work-life harmony or what it is, right? But what are the traits of people that have done this well?
Well, I think it starts with, I'm not sure this is a trait, but I think it starts with a decision. I was having a conversation with a coach, actually an NFL coach, an assistant coach in NFL, who he told me he had played with another team. He had actually played before he became a coach, and he had played with a team, and he said, they won a Super Bowl. And he said, I was thinking about when we won the Super Bowl, on TV, there's confetti falling and it looks like, the whole place is going crazy. And he said, but honestly, what happens is there's a little stage they bring out, and it's in one little part on the field, and there is some confetti, and they blow it out, and the cameras make it look like it's the whole arena's going crazy. But he said, this is one little corner of the field, and I'm looking around, and I'm seeing a bunch of our coaches, and I see some of our players. I look at our coaches who are just working all the time, and it's great that we got this trophy. But he said the truth is most of them had blown up their family, had not really taken care of their most important relationships. They didn't know their kids. And he said, I'm watching all that. And now he said, I'm a coach, and he has 2 little girls. And he said, I'm watching all this, and now reflecting on it, I'm thinking, and this organization, they're trying to win a Super Bowl as well. But he's asking himself, can we win a Super Bowl and me still be a dad to these little girls and be a husband to my wife? And he asked me this question, and when he did, I said, here's my question for you. If you win a Super Bowl and you lose all this, do you want to win a Super Bowl? And he said, if I lose all this, I don't want to win anything. I mean, I do want to win a Super Bowl, and I do, but I don't. So for him, it was just, I've got to think the right way first. I got to decide what kind of family do I want. And we talk about this in the book. It's you define, what do you really want here? What is success? And I think so many of us just get on this corporate ladder or whatever you want to call it, and we're heading toward what we have been told is successful. And we haven't really given a lot of thought to that at home. So what kind of family do you want? I would start there. And then the second thing we say is to decide why, not just to define what, but to decide why. Why do you want that kind of family? And if you if you can answer those questions, you can begin to almost create a little bit of a blueprint for building your family. And then there's, obviously in the back of the parable, we got 70-page activation guide that kind of walks you through how you would implement all this. And so those trades, it does start with a decision, but it also starts with putting some time into it and focusing on it and training. Could I use that word? I mean, I'm an old, back in the day, was a marathon runner for a while, and I'd have all these people would come to me and say, hey, I want to do a marathon. And what I found out through the years was people really didn't want to run a marathon. They wanted a medal and a T-shirt to say they've run a marathon. That's what they wanted. But if you're going to be a marathon runner, you got to put work in. You got to put some training in. You're gonna need to run. And I think the same thing's true at home. But people say I want a great family, but they're really not willing to. I think so many times we want people to think we have a great family, but are we willing to put time into those relationships? Are we able to admit when we're wrong to our spouse? Are we able to have a conversation when it's like, this is just not really working, and it's easier for me just to flip on the TV or scroll social media or whatever? And there's a price to be paid for this. It's gonna require you to do some work. But man, it's so cool when you get it right. And for me, when you don't get it right, that's where you have regret. You just go back and go, oh my gosh, that's not what I wanted. So, it's that decision and that willingness to put time into it. And the people who focus on having a great family, usually their family is at a better place than if they don't give a lot of time with it. The other thing I would say is having some people around you who maybe are a little bit ahead of you, or at least on the same journey with you, that you can look at and you can learn from and hang out with. That's helped us. The community around us has really helped us, encouraged us. And I would just encourage anybody who's listening, if it's not going the way you want it to, find some people around you that you think, I mean, they don't have it together either, but they might have it, you might can learn something from the people around you. And just those kind of things to me are what puts you on a road to success.
Brilliant, man. Randy, this is awesome. We don't talk about the personal side of leadership too much. I mean the home personal side. We talk about how to perform better and how do we, lead people better and how do we do this better. But you're right. If we are failing at home, then there probably is no amount of work that can compensate for that. Success at work is, do we really want to win the Super Bowl if we're still failing at home?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I love that. I'm so stoked that you're on. I'm grateful that you wrote this book. I know some people I'm going to gift it to that actually I'm talking with and coaching right now. So I think that it could help. Let me get from you. Where do we find you? Where do we get some information from you? We want to hear you speak. We want to hear you. We want to ask about your coaching services. We want to buy your book. What do we do?
Yeah, well, you can go to leadeveryday.com. That's our company. Mark and I have a company, Lead Every Day, and we're helping leaders and organizations and on everything from leadership development, building the culture, to alignment and engagement and execution. I mean, all the culture, all the fun stuff. We get to work with some of the best companies in the world, do a lot of stuff with Chick-fil-A and other companies. It's been so fun. Sports teams, it's awesome. If we can help your company, that'd be great. But if you're looking for the book, you can go to winningbeginsathome.com. It's going to be released June the 11th. I'm not sure when this will come out or whatever, but June the 11th of the summer here, right before Father's Day. I think it'd make a great Father's Day gift if you're looking for something to give the guys that you care about. You can pre-order it and on Amazon or wherever if you want to get it there. It's everywhere. Barnes and Noble, all the places you get your books, but we've got them there at winningbeginsathome.com as well. You can get that. We actually have this is kind of cool. We've created a course to sort of walk people through what to do after they listen to the parable and help them through that activation guide. So I think we got $150 worth of bonuses that we've created. If you pre-ordered the book, you actually get that for free. So you can go to winningbeginsathome.com. It'll take you there and check all that out. So yeah, if we can help you, reach out. Love to serve any leaders we can in their company life. But obviously, we're passionate about trying to to make sure things get better at home as well. And I'll just say this: I'm not sure. I mean, our world is pretty messed up right now. If you ask me, it's like there's a lot of stuff going on, and I don't know that the government's about to fix it all. I don't care which way you vote. I'm not confident they're going to solve what's going on. I've got a bunch of my friends who are teachers, and they're saying education is we're trying to do the best we can, but I'm not sure. To me, Scott, if it's going to get better, it starts in the four walls of our homes. If we can make that better, and then help our neighborhoods and help our schools and help our government, help our businesses, all that stuff. We've got a shot at making things better. When we get better, everything around us gets better. And so I would just encourage every leader who's listening to, yes, go build something great. But if you win at work and you lose at home, I'm not sure you win. Let's make sure that we're winning where it matters most as well.
Preach it, Randy. Thank you, dude. Have a beautiful day. Good luck with the book launch and everything that goes along with that, man.
You too. Thanks again for all you do, Scott. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Are we confusing busyness with actual accomplishment? The fact that we're busy, we're creating, we're doing. Is that what you define success to be? And I love this whole idea, and I'm going to use this. This is really good, about if you could win a Super Bowl, but fail at home, would you still want to win the Super Bowl? I think a lot of us, I would hope all of us would say absolutely not. I would not want to win a Super Bowl in lieu of destroying everything else that I have in my personal life. And I think that's something really interesting for us all to ponder. Dominate your controllables. There's a tool I use a lot called Control the Controllables, where people feel out of control. They feel like they don't have control of the things in their life, and it causes them a lot of stress and anxiety. This idea of dominate your controllables is really interesting mindset shift of refocusing like really on the things we can control. So I think it's an evolution from, control the controllables. Sure, let's focus on those things, but let's ultra focus on them and dominate those controllables, because that is where we are going to shine. That is what we're going to do to make things better. And I hope you will all go out and get his book. I love the aspect that it's this parable, this story, but then there's a lot of application. You know, I'm an application guy, and my latest book, Unlocked, a 52-week guide for the intentional leader, shameless plug. I love action. I put action in there, some insights and action. I think application leads to transformation, and I can tell that Randy does too. So thanks a lot for being on the show, Randy. If you want to find out more information about me or check out the show notes where there's going to be more information and links to the things referenced in this episode, visit SkotWaldron.com. And lastly, I'm asking for a little bit of love, just a little bit. So please take a moment, follow, rate the show. The algorithms like that. It helps me get the word out. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And until next time, stay unlocked.